All right, today we're going to do solving equations day 2. So these are going to be a little bit more difficult to solve. All right, so I did come up with some steps, so it'll kind of give you an idea of what you need to do in what order. Okay, so our first step is to distribute. So if there's parentheses, we've got to make sure we distribute. Second step is to combine like terms. So if there's like terms on either side of the equal sign, combine those like terms. And then we're going to add or subtract the variables to get them on one side, and then add or subtract the constants to get on the other side. Constants are just numbers without variables. And then the last side is to do the inverse and either multiply or possibly divide to get that variable all by itself. Okay, so if you take a look at the examples that I have, two examples that are worked out. The first one is 5x plus 4 equals 3x plus 14. Notice there's no parentheses, so we don't have to distribute. There are no like terms. 5x and 4 are not like terms, and then 3x and 14 are not like terms. So in terms of combining like terms, there's nothing to do there. So the first step is to get the variables on one side. So in this problem, I chose to move the 3x to the left. Since it was positive 3x, we subtract 3x. So then we get 5 minus 3 is 2x plus 4 equals 14. Now get the constants on the other side, so we got to move the 4 to the other side. Since it's plus 4, we're going to minus 4. 14 minus 4 gives us 10. Now we've got, remember, multiplication there, so the opposite of multiplication is divide, so divide both sides by 2, we get x equals 5. The example on the right, again, first thing we have to do since there are parentheses is we need to distribute, so we get 18x and then plus 27, and we still have that minus 5. Remember here there's really a there's a negative 1 in front. So we're distributing a negative 1, so that gives us a negative 1x if you want to make it negative 1x, and then a positive 3 because two negatives gives you a positive. Again, use those calculators if you need to. So now when we look at the left side, notice we've got some like terms right here. We've got a 27 minus 5, which gives us 22, and that's where that 22 comes from. But on the other side, we have a negative 1x and a 3, so we don't need to do anything there. All right, so again, third step is to get the variables on one side of the equal sign. Since this is a negative 1x, we're going to do plus 1x to both sides, which gives us 19. So we got 19x plus 22 equals 3. Now we've got to move that 22 to the other side. It's positive 22, so we want to do minus 22. That gives us 19x equals negative 19. And again, to get that variable alone, that's multiplication, so we do the opposite and divide, giving us an answer of x equals negative 1. All right, so we've got a few examples to do right now. And then we will be done. All right, so if you look at example A, we've got 4x minus 5 equals 2x plus 11. There are no parentheses, so we don't have to add or we don't have to distribute. We want to move that 2x to the left. There are no like terms either because 4x and negative 5 and 2x plus 11 are not like terms. And remember, we can't cross that equal sign. So we need to move the 2x to the other side. So we're going to do minus 2x. So that gives me 2x minus 5 equals 11. All right, next step, I want to add 5 to both sides because the opposite of negative 5 is addition, positive 5. So that gives us 2x equals 16. And our last step is to divide. Divide both sides by 2. So we end up with x equals 8. And again, since this was multiplication, we need to divide. All right, letter B is very similar. We want to get the variables on one side because there are no like terms on the left or the right. So if I want to move that variable to the left side, it's a negative 6x, so I want to do a positive 6x. 6x and negative 2x gives me 4x, again, not wanting to cross that equal sign. Plus 12 equals 16. All right, now we got to get the numbers over to the other side, so that makes me do minus 12. So I get 4x equals 4. And then the last step, just like the last problem, this is multiplication, so we've got to divide both sides by 4, and we end up with x equals 1. All right, so now they're going to get a little bit more tricky here. Again, we can't cross the equal sign. So we've got no parentheses, so we don't have to distribute, but we do have some like terms. So on the left side, I've got a 4x and a 2x, which gives me 6x. I also have a positive 4 and a negative 7. That gives me minus 3. But if you look at the right side, we don't have any like terms, so that's just going to stay negative 6x plus 9. All right, so when we go to solve this, again, get the variables on one side. So I'm going to move that negative 6 to the other side by doing positive 6. So that gives me 12x minus 3 equals 9. Now I got to get the numbers on the other side. So I got to do plus 3 since it was minus 3. That gives me 12x equals 12. And then my last step, since this is multiplication, is to divide both sides and do the opposite. So I get x equals 1. All right, letter D is very similar. Again, we've got some like terms on the left side. I've got 4 and a negative 5. That gives me negative 1x plus 11. There's nothing else to combine that 11 with. All right, on the other side, I've got the positive 2x and the negative 10. So that gives me negative 8x minus 3. Again, the hardest thing or the biggest thing that you guys are going to have issues with is the positives and negatives. So again, use a calculator, use your phone, whatever you've got. All right, so I've got a negative 8x, so I need to move the variables to the left side. So that means I'm going to do positive 8x. Negative 1 and 8 gives me 7x plus 11 equals negative 3. Now we've got to move the 11 to the other side, so that's minus 11 and minus 11 since it was positive 11. That gives me 7x equals negative 14, not 111 here. And then again, since it's multiplication right there, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to divide, and my answer is negative 2. All right, we got 2 more. These have some distributing in there, so that first step is to distribute. So that gives me 3 times 2 is 6x, 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, and on the right side I get a 5x minus 5. All right, so again, we can't cross that equal sign. There are no like terms. 6x and negative 3 aren't like terms, neither are 5x and 5. So I want to get the variables to the left side. So that's minus 5x minus 5x. So I get 1x, or just x, minus 3 equals negative 5. Now move that 3 to the other side, so I get plus 3, and I get x equals negative 2. Okay, now I know some of you are going to do something maybe a little different here. When you do 6x minus 5x, you're going to call it 1x. But just remember down at the end, if you have a 1 in front of there, you could divide both sides by 1. You're still going to get negative 2. Or just remember that 1x is the same as just plain old x. All right, last problem for today. It looks a little bit trickier, but again, we just have to distribute. So it's negative 6x, and then negative 2 times 4 gives me negative 8. On the other side, since that 2 is only touching the x plus 5 in parentheses, we don't distribute that 2 to that negative 2 at the end. So we get 2x plus 2 times 5 is 10, and that minus 2 stays minus 2. All right, on the left side, we don't have any like terms. Negative 6x and 8 are not like terms. But on the right side, we have a 10 and a minus 2, so that gives me 2x plus 8. And now it's just a matter of solving, not crossing that equal sign. So I've got to move that 2x to the left side, so make it minus 2x. That gives me negative 8x minus 8 equals 8. Lots of 8s there. Now I've got to move the number to the right side, so that's going to be plus 8 and plus 8. So that gives me negative 8x equals 16. And again, since I have multiplication, my last step is to divide both sides, and make sure you divide by negative 8, not just 8. And my solution is x equals negative 2. All right, so there's a few examples. Your homework is a worksheet, which I've posted on Schoology as well. Again, if you've not taken some of the quizzes or tests, make sure you reach out to me. We have 1 week left after today. So make sure that you are getting caught up so that you do earn credit for the class. If you have any questions, please email me. We can set up a Zoom, or I can just communicate via email, and we'll go from there. Thanks. Have a great day.